Before Isaac Herrera died, he lived fast and thought deep, but only about things he could control. Raised in a devout Catholic household in Brooklyn, Isaac had turned away from religion by the time he was 17. Church, prayer, and God's will had never answered his questions. Not when his father left, not when he got jumped in Flatbush, not when his younger cousin overdosed at 16. In his 30s, Isaac wore his skepticism like armor. He was sharp, ambitious, and good at pretending nothing rattled him. He worked as a systems analyst for a tech company in downtown Manhattan, made decent money, hit the gym, dated casually, and lived for Friday nights. To most people, he was just a regular guy trying to survive the city. But inside, he carried a constant low hum of unrest, a sense that life was scripted, empty, and rigged against him. He didn't know what he believed, but he was sure of one thing: he didn't believe in fairy tales. And then one night, he died. Before we take you into what he saw when he crossed over, do us a quick favor: subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. My name is Isaac Herrera, and I didn't believe in anything I couldn't touch, measure, or control. God? Afterlife? Nah. I figured people just told themselves those stories to sleep better at night. That all changed on October 12th, 2023. I remember that day vividly. I had just gotten off work, late as usual. I hopped on my motorcycle, my pride and joy, a black Yamaha R6, and tore through the Brooklyn streets like I always did. Fast, reckless, invincible. I wasn't even wearing a full-face helmet, just that half lid that barely covered my brain. The last thing I remember was speeding down Atlantic Avenue, trying to beat a yellow light, then darkness, and then something else. It was like I was falling, but not through space, through time. Sounds warped, colors bled into each other. I remember this crushing pressure, like my whole existence was being squeezed into 1 second. Then nothingness, not black, just absence. I thought I had ceased to exist, and then I was standing, or floating, I don't know, but I was aware. Everything around me was blinding, white, but not like any white I've ever seen. It was alive. There was no sky, no ground, no walls, just this endless radiance. But I wasn't afraid. I should have been, but I wasn't. Then he came. I didn't see a face at first, just this presence. So overwhelming that I dropped, not like my knees bent, but like my soul collapsed in front of him. It was like all the lies I'd ever told, all the pride I'd built up, every moment of arrogance or lust or rage, they were laid bare in front of him. I didn't even need to speak. He knew everything. And yet there was no hatred in him, no wrath, just sorrow, like watching a child try to fix a shattered vase with tape. He was grieved, but also full of love. Then he spoke, not with a voice, but into me. He said, "You were never in control. None of you are, but I've always been here." I broke. I cried, not with my eyes because I don't even know if I had eyes, but I wept from a place deeper than my body. He showed me scenes from my life. The night my father left, the time I almost OD'd but blamed it on a bad meal, all the people I had hurt. He showed me that he had been there, watching, waiting. Then I saw a cross. I didn't want to look at it. It was blinding, burning, not like fire but like truth. I screamed, not from pain but from realization. I had mocked all of this, denied it, laughed at the very idea of Jesus Christ, and now I knew. And I wasn't real, and I wasn't ready. I wanted to stay. I wanted to fix it, but he said not yet. And just like that, I was back, flat on the pavement, EMTs shouting, my ribs cracked, blood in my mouth, but all I could whisper was, "He's real." The hospital kept me for 6 days. Broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a concussion that made the ceiling spin every time I blinked. But none of that compared to what was happening inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The light, the voice, him. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back there, weightless, exposed, known. But when I opened them, I was in a sterile room, hooked to machines, watching the news play on mute while my soul begged for answers. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not even my mom when she came to visit with her rosary beads and Tupperware. She prayed over me while I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind spinning. But the silence didn't last long. 2 days after I got home, I called Mateo, my old best friend. We hadn't talked in over a year. He got religious after high school and became a youth pastor. I used to tease him for it. Now I needed him like air. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him what I saw, what I felt, what I heard. His end of the line went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Isaac, do you know what that was?" I said, "I think I met Jesus." He started crying. Just like that. No pretense, no hesitation. "He spared you, man." He said, "He's calling you." That phrase haunted me. He's calling you. But to what? I didn't even know how to pray. I hadn't opened a Bible in over a decade. I still cursed too much. Still had Vanessa's number in my phone, even though I knew she was married now. I was the same broken dude in a cracked body, but with a soul that had seen the face of God. Things got weird real fast. I tried telling my mom. You'd think she'd rejoice. Catholic woman, always lighting candles and praying for her prodigal son. But when I told her, she just frowned. "Be careful, Mijo. The mind plays tricks when the body is weak." That one cut deep. Then I told Deshaun, my coworker and gym buddy. His response? "Bro, that's wild. But maybe it was just a dream, like a morphine trip or something." No one really understood what happened to me. I felt like I was walking between two worlds. I couldn't go back to the old me, but I wasn't sure how to become the new me. I didn't know how to talk about Jesus without sounding fake. I still had urges, bad habits, questions. But the biggest difference? I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. Even in silence, I felt watched, but not in a creepy way, in a comforting way. Like someone was keeping an eye on me, guiding me, gently, patiently. And even though I had no clue what came next, I knew one thing for sure. He wanted me to change. It was a Thursday night, about 3 weeks after the accident. I couldn't sleep, again. I'd been having these vivid, restless dreams that felt more like memories than imagination. Sometimes I'd hear the same phrase echoing over and over. None of it is random. I thought maybe I was just spiraling, trauma, meds, anxiety. But then something happened that I still can't explain. I was sitting in my room, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I hadn't touched my Bible since the hospital chaplain left it on my nightstand. It just sat there, spine uncracked. But that night, something pushed me. Not physically, but inside. Like my soul stood up before my body did. I picked it up. I didn't know where to start, so I just opened it randomly. My eyes landed on a verse in the Gospel of John. I'll never forget it. "You did not choose me, but I chose you." I read it again and again. It hit me like a freight train. I thought I'd stumbled into that light by accident, that my NDE was just a byproduct of trauma. But this verse, that moment, felt like a direct message. He had chosen me, even when I'd been running in the opposite direction. I broke down, right there on the floor. Ugly tears, snot, the whole thing. And then something happened. It was like the room shifted, not visibly, but spiritually. The air felt thick. My ears started to ring, not painfully, but like something powerful was tuning into the frequency. I looked up and I swear on everything, I saw him again. Not fully, just a glimpse, a flash of white in the corner. But the same feeling from the NDE flooded me, and I heard him, not audibly, not through my ears, but inside. "You were made for more than this." I sat frozen for what felt like hours. Every bad decision, every wasted night, every empty hookup, every selfish thought. It all unraveled in front of me. And yet I didn't feel condemned. I felt invited. Like God himself was telling me that my past wasn't the end of my story. And here's the twist. He didn't just want me to believe. He wanted me to speak. The words came into my heart so clearly. "You will tell them. You will show them I am real." It terrified me. Me? The guy who mocked Christians, who spent nights high out of his mind ranting about how religion was for the weak. But I knew it in my bones. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a calling. That night, everything changed. I wasn't just someone who had a spiritual experience. I was someone who had seen Jesus. And now I had a responsibility, a weight, a mission. And I had no idea how my life or my relationships were about to unravel because of it. I started talking. Not publicly, just small conversations, quiet tests. I was trying to gauge if I was crazy or if something real had actually happened to me. The first person I opened up to after Mateo was my uncle, Ramon. He had a past, drugs, gangs, prison, but he got saved in Rikers and had been clean for over a decade. We hadn't been close, but I figured if anyone might understand, it'd be him. We sat on his front stoop in Bushwick, smoking black coffee and talking like old men. "I think Jesus spoke to me," I said. He didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "Then you'd better listen, mijo, 'cause when he speaks, he ain't just making noise." I told him everything, the light, the words, the sense that I was supposed to do something now. When I mentioned the Bible verse, "You did not choose me, but I chose you," he closed his eyes and whispered it along with me. "You think this means I gotta preach or something?" I asked. He looked straight at me and said, "I think it means you can't live like you used to." Those words hit harder than he probably realized, but not everyone reacted like that. When I finally told my mom the full version of what I'd seen, how I met Jesus, how he spoke to me, she didn't cry or celebrate. She stared at me like I was someone she couldn't recognize. "You're talking like those born-again people on TV," she said, folding her arms. "You've always been dramatic, Isaac." I tried to explain, but the more I spoke, the more distant she became. "You don't need to throw away everything just because you had a moment," she added. "Just come back to church, confess, light a candle." She didn't get it. This wasn't about rituals anymore. This wasn't religion. This was a relationship. I had met the living Jesus, not a statue, not a painting, not a tradition. Then came Vanessa. She and I weren't together anymore, but we still messaged now and then. I told her over coffee, thinking maybe she'd be open. She'd always been into astrology and the universe stuff. But when I told her the name Jesus, something in her face shut off. "You almost died, Isaac," she said. "Your brain was probably just coping." "It wasn't my brain," I said. "I know what I saw." She touched my hand and smiled, but it was the kind of smile people give when they think you've gone off the deep end. "Just promise me you won't go full cult mode, okay?" That stung more than I'd admit. I realized then I was losing people, not in a dramatic way, but slowly, quietly. One raised eyebrow at a time, one "you okay" text at a time. But something deeper was happening too. For every person who pulled back, God pulled closer. And even though I was afraid of what it would cost me, I knew deep down I wasn't going back to who I was. Word started to get out. I wasn't trying to make a scene, but Brooklyn talks. Between my uncle, Mateo, Vanessa, and the random posts I started making online, little scripture quotes, late-night reflections, journal entries, it didn't take long before people started noticing that something had shifted in me. That's when the real pressure began. At work, it got awkward fast. I'd always been the laid-back, sarcastic guy, showed up late, joked about everything, never took anything too seriously. But suddenly, I wasn't laughing at the same jokes. I wasn't dragging myself out to the bar after work. I wasn't eyeing the new intern like the rest of the guys. I was different. Deshaun pulled me aside one day after a meeting and said, "Yo, are you in some kind of program or something? You've been acting holy." I laughed, but I knew he wasn't joking. Then came the real blow. I got passed up for a promotion I was promised 6 months ago. No warning, no explanation, just a sudden shift in tone from management. One of the directors said during my review, "We've just noticed you seem a little distracted lately. Not quite as focused." I wanted to scream, "I'm not distracted, I'm being rebuilt." But instead I nodded, smiled, and walked out with a knot in my stomach. At home, things got worse with my mom. She started leaving Catholic pamphlets on my bed like spiritual guilt grenades. She'd pray extra loud in the kitchen when I walked by, muttering things in Spanish under her breath that sounded like exorcisms. One night she snapped. "Do you think you're better than us now?" she shouted. "Walking around with your Bible like you've seen something no one else has?" I didn't yell back. I just stood there, stunned. I realized we were speaking two different spiritual languages. Hers built on tradition and fear, mine built on encounter and grace. But it wasn't all loss. Mateo started inviting me to Bible studies. At first I resisted. I didn't want to be that guy. But I went, sat in the back, stayed quiet. And then after one of those nights, a teenage girl came up to me, someone I'd never met before. "I heard what happened to you," she said, her voice shaky. "My brother died last year, and I've been wondering if there's anything after all this. Your story, it gave me hope." That hit me like a freight train. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about my journey. People were watching, listening, questioning their own beliefs because of what God was doing in me. But that also meant the stakes were higher, the enemy was louder, and the cost was rising. I'd lost comfort, I'd lost reputation, I was starting to lose people I loved. And yet I couldn't stop, because I knew this wasn't about me anymore. This was about truth. I wish I could tell you that once I accepted the truth, peace just flooded in and never left. But it didn't. What actually came was tension, deep, emotional, heart-ripping tension. Not just with the people around me, with myself. Some nights I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering prayers I wasn't even sure I was doing right. Are you still here? Why does this hurt so much? Why does following you feel like I'm losing everything else? One night, I finally broke down. I drove to the church where Mateo worked. I didn't even call him. I just sat on the steps like some confused teenager waiting for a miracle. He found me there an hour later, hoodie pulled low, tears on my cheeks. I didn't bother hiding. I don't think I can do this, I told him. I don't know how to be this person. He sat down beside me and said something I'll never forget. You're not supposed to be this person. You're supposed to become him. That line wrecked me. Because up to that point, I thought I had to snap into this perfect version of myself. Holy, wise, polished. But instead, I was still broken, still tempted, still angry, still me. And nowhere was that more obvious than when I ran into Vanessa again. We bumped into each other outside a grocery store. She looked different, tired, a little older, like life had added some weight. We ended up grabbing coffee, mostly just catching up. But halfway through, she leaned forward and said, I liked you better before. I flinched. Before what? Before you got all religious, she said, eyes flat. You were fun. You were real. Now it's like you're trying to be someone else. I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to argue, to explain the difference between religion and what happened to me. But another part of me, one I wasn't proud of, just wanted to go back to who I was. Because it was easier. That conversation haunted me. Not because I missed Vanessa, but because I missed how simple life used to feel when I didn't care. Now, everything felt heavy. Every word mattered. Every decision carried eternal weight. I couldn't even scroll Instagram without feeling a tug in my spirit. Is this feeding your soul or killing it? The temptation to numb out, to go back, was real. But every time I got close to the edge, I'd feel it again. That whisper, that weight, that presence. Like Jesus was gently grabbing my collar and saying, not that way, not anymore. I was still figuring it out. I was feeling what he felt for them. He wasn't calling me to just be saved. He was calling me to step into battle. Spiritual warfare was real. The enemy wasn't a metaphor. And now that I had seen the truth, I was a threat. The attacks came stronger, sudden waves of doubt, fear, even temptation, so sharp it felt demonic. But there was power in his name. Every time I said Jesus, peace flooded in. Not comfort, peace. Like standing in a storm and knowing it can't drown you. I knew now. I wasn't just surviving my transformation. I was being armed. What started as a personal awakening was becoming a spiritual collision, and not just for me. It started with my uncle, Ramon. One night after a prayer group, I stayed behind with Mateo and shared one of the dreams I'd been having. Ramon was there, sitting quietly in the back. When I finished, he stood up, walked over and said, "That door you keep seeing? I used to see that in prison." My heart dropped. "You serious?" He nodded. Every time I'd try to kill myself in there, every time I felt like the voices were louder than the walls, I'd see that door in my sleep, but it never opened. He paused, tears welling up. Maybe it wasn't supposed to open then. Maybe it's opening now, for you. We prayed together for the first time, like really prayed, and something shifted in both of us that night. He started bringing his old crew, guys he used to run with on the street, to our late-night Bible studies. Some just came for the free pizza, but a few, they stayed. One of them, a guy named Luis, cried through the whole third meeting and whispered, "I thought God forgot about people like us." Then there was my mother. Her resistance didn't go away, but something cracked one Sunday afternoon. I was reading the Bible in the living room, and she sat across from me with her rosary, sighing loud enough for me to hear. "Do you ever stop?" she asked. I smiled. "Not anymore." She rolled her eyes, but softer than usual. "You look different, you know that? Like peace, even with everything happening, even with what you've lost." I looked up, because it's not about what I've lost, it's about what I finally found. She didn't respond, but that night, I found her asleep on the couch, Bible open in her lap, tears on her cheeks. Vanessa reached out again, too. She messaged me one night after I posted something about redemption. "Did you mean that?" she asked. "That even after everything, people like us can still be forgiven?" I sat with that message for an hour. I didn't want to give her a half answer. I finally replied, "It's not even about what we did. It's about what he already did. Yes, he can forgive anything, if you're ready. She didn't respond for a few days, but when she did, she asked if I'd pray for her. People were watching me now, at work, in my family, online. I started posting short videos about my NDE, about what I felt God was saying to me. At first it felt awkward, like standing naked in front of strangers, but the messages started pouring in. A high school kid in Texas messaged me saying he had planned to take his own life, but something I said about being seen by God made him stop. A woman in Brazil wrote that she'd left the church years ago, but hearing me talk about Jesus like he was real, like he was here, made her open her Bible for the first time in years. I didn't know these people, but somehow their stories were getting tangled up in mine. It terrified me and thrilled me, because the truth was clear now. This wasn't just about me being saved, it was about setting others free. And I hadn't even seen the biggest test yet. It all came crashing down the night I lost my job. They called it a restructuring, but we both knew what it really was. "You've been an amazing asset, Isaac," my manager said, eyes fixed on the HR rep beside her. "But with recent performance trends and your shift in focus, it just doesn't align with our current direction." Shift in focus. That was code for, "You're not like us anymore." And they were right. I wasn't. I couldn't be. I walked out of that glass tower into the cold Manhattan air with a cardboard box in my arms and the realization that following Jesus had cost me my career. Not just a job, my identity, my reputation, everything I had built for years. I didn't go home right away. I sat on a bench near the East River, staring at the gray water, wondering what in the world I had done. "This isn't how it's supposed to go," I whispered. "I thought if I followed you, you'd cover me." Silence. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel him. I tried praying, nothing. I tried quoting scripture, nothing. I felt like I was calling into a dead phone, and that's when the thought came, just walk away. This isn't worth it. I'd love to say I immediately rebuked it in Jesus' name, but I didn't. I sat with it. I let it crawl inside. I started thinking about what it would be like to just go back, to keep my mouth shut, to unpost the videos, to say it was just a hallucination, to play it safe. I could have my job back, my old life, my comfort. But then I thought of the kid in Texas, of Vanessa, of my mom reading her Bible when she thought I wasn't looking, of Ramon praying with ex-gangsters, of the dreams, the voice, the cross. I couldn't unsee what I had seen, and even if it cost me everything, I knew what was true. That night I made a decision. I was going all in. No more lukewarm, no more halfway. I didn't know how I was going to pay rent. I didn't know what came next. But I knew I couldn't turn my back on Jesus. Not after what he showed me. Not after he pulled me out of the grave. So I started fasting again, praying harder, pressing in when everything in me wanted to run. And then, during one of those quiet nights, I opened the Bible, and my eyes landed on this. "Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Matthew 10:39. I closed the Bible and cried. That was it. That was the deal. I wasn't just called to believe in him. I was called to lose my life, the version I had built with my own hands, so he could give me the one he planned. And with that realization, peace came back. Not the kind that erased my problems, but the kind that told me, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. But little did I know, the real confrontation was still ahead. A few weeks after losing my job, everything started unraveling at once. First, Mateo called. His church had seen the videos I was posting online, my testimony, my dreams, the NDE details. At first, they were supportive, curious even, but then people started talking, questioning. One elder thought I was sensationalizing my experience. Another said I was too green, too unstable, not theologically grounded. "They're asking me to distance myself from you," Mateo said quietly over the phone. "They don't want to be associated with what they're calling spiritual risk." That one cut deep. Mateo had been my anchor since this all began. He helped me find scripture when I didn't even know where to start. And now, even he was being pressured to walk away. I told him I understood. But after we hung up, I sat in the dark and felt more alone than I had during any part of the accident. Then came the conversation with my mom. She cornered me in the kitchen. "Mijo," she said, voice trembling, "I raised you to be Catholic. You were baptized. You were confirmed. And now you're, what? A preacher? A prophet? You don't even go to Mass anymore." I'm not turning away from God, I said softly. I've just finally met him. She slammed her hand on the counter. You think we didn't know him? You think your abuela didn't know Jesus? I think I was asleep, I said, and now I'm awake, she cried. And I didn't try to stop her, because I realized something in that moment. This walk was going to cost me things that wouldn't always come back. Not every relationship could follow me where I was going. I tried to find comfort in prayer, but even that became warfare. My thoughts would wander mid-sentence. Doubt would scream over my whisper. The enemy hit me in the most personal places. My past, my shame, my insecurities, telling me I was unworthy, unqualified, unwanted. I almost believed it, until one night I walked into my room and found a handwritten letter on my pillow. It was from Luis, one of the ex-gang members my uncle brought to Bible study. It read, "You probably don't realize this, but hearing you speak is what made me believe God could still love people like me. I've started praying for my daughter again. I've started living again. Thank you for not staying silent." That letter hit like a defibrillator to the soul, because that was the moment I realized, if I shut up, people stay in the dark. And no matter how much it cost me, relationships, reputation, rest, I couldn't go silent. So I made a decision. I started planning to speak publicly, really publicly, not just little Instagram videos. I found a mic, borrowed a camera, and began building something online that could reach the people nobody else wanted to touch. The skeptics, the addicts, the ones on the edge, the ones who thought they had gone too far. It was scary, it felt insane. But I kept hearing it in my spirit. Tell them what you saw, not what I knew, not what I had read. What I saw, that was the turning point. Because once you decide to live for truth, not approval, you become dangerous to the darkness. And that's exactly where I was heading. It happened on a Sunday night. I was scheduled to speak at a small gathering Mateo had arranged, an unofficial, off-the-record event at a community center in Queens. No lights, no stage, no live stream, just plastic chairs, folding tables, and a few dozen souls, most of them curious, skeptical, or hurting. But the day before the event, I found out my mother had been hospitalized. Hypertension, heart complications, stress. I sat in the ER beside her, watching the monitors beep steadily, wondering if this was my fault. Had my transformation broken her heart? She wouldn't look at me. She lay in that hospital bed, rosary gripped in her hand like a lifeline, eyes closed like she was praying me away. "Mom," I whispered, "I love you. I know this is hard, but don't preach to me, Isaac." She said softly, "I just want my son back." That wrecked me, because in her mind I had died. Not in the accident, but after it. I had become someone she didn't recognize, someone she couldn't connect with. And despite everything Jesus had done in me, a part of me still craved her approval, her acceptance. That night, I sat in my car outside the community center, wrestling with a question I never thought I'd ask again. Was this all a mistake? Not the experience, not the light. I knew that was real. But this calling, this mission, this fire in my bones that wouldn't go away. What if I was wrong? What if I had ruined my relationships, lost my job, and alienated my family chasing something I couldn't prove? I looked down at my hands, shaking. I hadn't even noticed. My breath was shallow, my chest tight. I felt like I was spiraling. And then I prayed, not a beautiful poetic prayer, just a desperate one. "Jesus, if you're really with me, I need you now." That's when it happened. Not a vision, not a voice, but a presence so strong, so undeniable. It was like the air inside the car shifted, the fear lifted, the doubt melted, and I felt him. Not as an idea, not as memory, but as a person. He didn't say anything this time. He didn't need to. His presence alone said everything. I got out of the car and walked into that room. I told them everything, my past, the accident, the encounter with Jesus, the dreams, the fear, the calling. I didn't hold anything back. When I finished, no one clapped, no one cheered, but one by one, people started weeping. Some dropped to their knees. One man walked up to me and whispered, "I've been an atheist for 20 years, but what you just said, I can't shake it." That night, something changed. Not just in them, in me. Because I realized that God had been waiting for this moment, not just to use me, but to complete something in me. I had been carrying the weight of everyone's approval, everyone's expectations, but now I laid it all down, at the foot of the cross, for real, forever. And that's where the breakthrough began. I didn't sleep that night. After the gathering, I drove straight to the waterfront. Same bench by the East River where I sat the day I lost my job. Only this time, I wasn't broken. I was undone. There's a difference. Broken is what happens when life hits you hard. Undone is what happens when God strips you bare, not to shame you, but to remake you. I sat there in the cold breeze, watching the city lights shimmer across the water, and I whispered one word I had never truly said to God before: yes. Not yes if you fix my life. Not yes if you give me answers. Just yes to whatever He wanted, however He wanted to use me. No conditions, no negotiations. That was my real surrender. Not in a hospital bed, not in a church pew, but there at the edge of my city, under a silent sky, with tears drying on my face and fire rising in my chest. And then it happened. I felt something inside of me break open. Like chains I didn't even know I was still carrying finally fell to the ground. Fear, gone. Shame, gone. The constant ache for approval, from my mother, from the world, from my past, gone. And what replaced it was peace. Not calm, not numbness, but deep, unshakable peace. It felt like Jesus Himself was standing beside me, smiling. Not because I had done something impressive, but because I had finally let go. I whispered again, "I'm yours." And I felt Him say, not in words, but straight into my spirit, "Then live like it." That was the final key, the revelation that changed everything. This wasn't just about a one-time experience, it was about a flash of light and a second chance. This was a new life, a new identity. One I didn't earn, but one I was called to walk in. And I did. I started preaching, not from a pulpit, but from parks, street corners, cafes, anywhere someone would listen. I shared my story online, raw, unpolished, honest. People responded, not to me, but to the truth, to Him. Doors opened, not fast, not flashy, but faithfully. And my mom, one night, she walked into my room while I was praying. No words, just quiet tears. She knelt beside me and whispered, "I see it now, Mijo. I see Him in you." That night, we prayed together for the first time in years. I'm not perfect. I still wrestle, still stumble, but I don't walk alone. I never did. And now I know who walks with me. Because I died that night on Atlantic Avenue. And when I woke up, I wasn't the same man. I met Jesus. And nothing, not fear, not failure, not the world, can ever take that away. This isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning. Looking back now, it's hard to even remember who I was before all of this. The guy who mocked prayer, the one who thought life was random, who lived on autopilot, surviving, not living, who wore confidence like a mask to hide a hollow spirit. That man died on the pavement. And honestly, he needed to. I live differently now, not because I have all the answers, but because I've finally found the only one that matters, Jesus. He wasn't an idea, he wasn't a symbol, he wasn't a coping mechanism. He was and is a person, real, present, loving, just, and closer than the air I breathe. Since the accident, my life hasn't become easier. In many ways, it's become harder. I've lost things, lost people, but I've gained something no one can ever take from me: identity, purpose, peace that passes understanding. There are still nights when I cry, still moments when doubt whispers in the dark, but I no longer face those things alone. I now live with a sense of urgency, not panic, but purpose. Because I know how many people are walking around like I was, numb, angry, searching. And I can't keep this to myself. I won't. That's why I'm sharing this with you, because maybe you're where I was. Maybe you're asking the same questions I asked. Is God real? Is Jesus who He says He is? Can someone like me really be redeemed? My answer, from the deepest place in my soul, is this: yes. If He met me, in my pride, in my sin, in my near death, then He can meet you too. Right where you are. You don't have to clean yourself up first. You don't have to fix your life. You don't have to be religious. You just have to say yes. That's where everything begins. If my story has stirred something in you, don't ignore it. That stirring might be the voice of the one who created you, calling you home. And if you've already met Him, but drifted, grown cold, or gotten weary, this is your reminder. He's not done with you. He never was. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss more real testimonies like this. Like the video to help it reach someone who might be on the edge. And most importantly, drop a comment. Tell us where you're from, or share a moment when you felt like God was calling you back. Let's build a space where the broken are welcome, where stories become seeds, and where Jesus gets the glory. Thank you for listening. And remember, you were never in control, but He's been there the whole time.